Luigi Mangione got hit with a terrorism charge from the state. This terrorism charge got dismissed a month or two ago. Everyone went crazy in the courtroom because this guy is like the Chad for all the progressive girls. They all love this dude. This dude was getting like literally thousands of letters from women, sending him gifts and shit like that because this guy became super famous after this happened. Let's get into Luigi Mangione. As you guys know, the Luigi Mangione case, this was the guy going back in time. Quick refresher for you guys. Luigi Mangione is the guy that fatally shot and killed the CEO of UnitedHealthcare. I think it was at the beginning of 2025 or late 2024, right? Shot him in cold blood in downtown Manhattan in the back of the head. Bullets had messages, depose, deny, and delay, right? And this was a very, a very loud and illegal protest towards the healthcare system that we have here in America. As many of you guys know, the United States, for being a first world country, we do not have universal healthcare like many other developed first world nations. And this has created a lot of problems for people, right? Now, I'm not going to get into the economics and the politics of whether we should have free healthcare or not. But what I am going to say is that Luigi Mangione shooting and killing this guy was 100% politically motivated, okay? And the guy isn't an idiot. He's an Ivy League grad. I think he went to UPenn, right? Higher IQ. He stalked this guy, and around 6 o'clock in the morning as he was walking in downtown Manhattan, dude pulled up behind him, shot him like 3 times in the back of the dome. So he ends up fleeing New York City and gets caught, if I'm not mistaken, in some rural area in Pennsylvania. When he's caught, they find a manifesto, a gun, and some other incriminated things. He's immediately arrested and transported back to New York City, where he's met by Mayor Eric Adams and like fucking 100 NYPD dudes. It was like the fucking craziest perp walk I've ever seen in my life. It was like, damn, nigga, like this is overkill, bro. You know? Let me see if I can find a clip for you guys. Because this shit was fucking insane. I was like, damn, no wonder New York fucking sucks and there's nothing to... Bro, these niggas are spending all their money on perp walks.
This killer Luigi Mangione pleaded not guilty on state charges, including murder and terrorism. Mangione's attorney says she's concerned about her client's right to a fair trial, specifically citing the very public display when authorities escorted Mangione from the Wall Street heliport to Manhattan.
Bro, this shit is crazy.
Manhattan federal court last week after he waived
guys with rifles, all this shit.
Extradition from Pennsylvania.
They're literally treating him like he is like some sort of political fodder, like some sort of spectacle. He was on display for everyone to see in the biggest staged perp walk I've ever seen in my career. It was absolutely unnecessary. It was like perfectly choreographed. And what was the New York City mayor doing at this press conference?
And you know what makes this funny? Mayor Adams had like just been indicted by the FBI at this point. That's what kind of makes it even funnier. All the dudes that know the lore, right? Eric Adams that had literally just been indicted by the Department of Justice out of the Southern District of New York when he did this. And if you guys are wondering, he got indicted basically for bribery and like public corruption. He was, long story short, he rushed the inspections for a building that was going to be used as a Turkish consulate, breaking a bunch of laws, and he got like wined and dined and flown out and shit like that. So he was basically taking money from a foreign government to expedite the building process and circumventing certain procedures that need to be put in place. And that's what got him indicted. But then Donald Trump came in and basically, he didn't like full on pardon him, but he kind of got the charges dismissed in exchange for Eric Adams creating a more favorable environment for Trump to do mass deportations in New York City. Because historically speaking, the city of New York has always been considered a sanctuary city, and mayors have always made it where it's very difficult for ICE to do their job and actually arrest illegal aliens in the city. So basically it was you scratch my back, I scratch your back. You got these federal charges over your head. I want to go ahead and enforce immigration. They voted for mass deportations. Bam. We get the DOJ off your back. You let the fucking ICE agents go in and do what they got to do. So that's what kind of made this even funnier for those of you that are wondering when they did this fucking perp walk. It's like, bruh, you got indicted too, Eric Adams.
Your Honor, that just made it utterly political.
The state charges against Mangione could get him life in prison, but the federal murder charges could mean the death penalty.
Now, the other thing also that's important to know is that Luigi Mangione got hit with a terrorism charge from the state, okay? This terrorism charge got dismissed like a month or two ago. Everyone went crazy in the fucking courtroom. Because this guy, chat, is like the Chad for all the fucking progressive girls. They all love this dude. All these liberal ass women love this dude. There's like some girl, Taylor Ferenz or some, I forget, some, right? Some fucking. She was like creaming her pants for this fucking guy on Twitter. Like this guy gets like thousands of love letters from women. Yeah, look, man, he's a good looking guy, pause, right? In shape and shit like that. But yeah, this dude was getting like literally thousands of letters from women, sending him gifts and shit like that because this guy became super famous after this happened. And another reason too, just to give the NYPD a little bit of defense of why they did that retarded perp walk, is they were scared because when he got arrested, he got a lot of support. People were out protesting with like Luigi signs and shit like that. So they were worried that someone would fucking, ambush the perp walk and try to get him released or bust him out of there. So that's kind of what happened with Luigi Mangione. So now you guys understand the story and the lore. Let's get into the breaking news with Luigi Mangione.
With our top stories that we're following today. Once again, we're following this story as it pertains to Luigi Mangione. You might recognize that name. He's the man who's accused of gunning down UnitedHealthcare CEO Brian Thompson last December in New York City. Well, he's back in court today. This is for a series of hearings over which evidence will be allowed during his trial. We know that Mangione's attorneys are now arguing that certain evidence should be excluded from this upcoming trial on the state murder charges. This because of how they claim the evidence was obtained. The prosecution, though, is expected to call up more than 24 witnesses in this case, as these hearings are expected to last several days. So to talk a lot more about what's unfolding, I want to bring into the conversation former federal prosecutor Nima Rahmani. Nima, thanks so much for being with us here on Live Now from Fox, talking about this. Of course, something we've been following in every detail since the manhunt first started last December after UnitedHealthcare CEO Brian Thompson was gunned down. But focusing on what's going on and why we're in the courtroom today, there have been some questions about the evidence, what can be admitted, what should be admitted. In fact, there was even a question about whether or not Luigi Mangione's Miranda rights were read to him as he was being arrested. Can you sort of go into what we're seeing as well?
Christina, this is an important multi-day evidentiary hearing, a suppression hearing, where the defense is trying to suppress some of the evidence seized and some of the statements made by Luigi Mangione in violation of the 4th and 5th Amendments, respectively. So there's a lot of specific questioning as to what happened and when it happened. And I'll start with the 4th Amendment. Under the 4th Amendment, law enforcement, they do have the right to conduct a Terry stop. That's what's considered a stop and frisk. And for that, they can...
This is when he shot the CEO.
Ascertain someone's identity and pat them down for weapons. So that's what happened first. So we're seeing...
And it's actually crazy because like the left made this guy like a martyr, bro. Like no one gave a shit that this guy got brutally murdered. They're like, yeah, we want universal health care. Luigi spoke for the rest of us. I'm like, bro, these liberals are demonic, absolutely demonic. This is why they were happy when Charlie Kirk got shot.
Stills here of the surveillance footage from that McDonald's in Pennsylvania. There were customers who believed that the person at that McDonald's was the person that they had seen in the videos killing UnitedHealthcare CEO Brian Thompson. They informed the store manager, called 911. Officers showed up. So that first step is to ascertain Mangione's identity. And at the time, he allegedly gave them a false name and a false ID. And officers testified that they recognized him from the wanted pictures. At that point, they had probable cause to arrest him. The arrest is important for two.
And I think they released the footage of him getting arrested in the McDonald's. He got caught at a McDonald's somewhere in rural Pennsylvania.
Reasons. One, once someone is arrested, they can be searched incident to arrest. Anything within their wingspan. So that's where the backpack comes in, where the 3D gun, the silencer, that notebook journal, thing called the manifesto, were found. They can also conduct an inventory search pursuant to arrest. The other thing that an arrest triggers is the right to have the Miranda warnings be read to you. Before then, anything that Mangione said, if he was free to leave, if he wasn't under arrest, that's fine under the 5th Amendment. That doesn't violate one's right to remain silent. It's only when there's a custodial interrogation, someone's under arrest, they have to have those Miranda rights given. So the timing of everything critical in a case like this. That's why the defense is focused on arguments like, well, there were a lot of officers there. He wasn't free to leave. They're trying to move that arrest earlier in time to say that there was no probable cause and that the Miranda warnings were read too late.
It's interesting as all of this is unfolding, as we're still looking at this live vantage point outside of the court courthouse. I appreciate you for breaking down the very latest, but what's going on right now inside that we have there from some of our partners there at Fox 5 is that the Pennsylvania officer, Joseph Detweiler, is currently testifying today about that confrontation that took place there in the McDonald's during the police manhunt. In fact, what we know is that the prosecutor at 11:24 a.m. asked if the case could be called for a recess from court, which the court granted, leading to the resumption of footage that was also shown from his body camera footage, revealing several officers inside of that McDonald's. Of course, cross-examination began just about an hour or so ago. I have to ask you, Neva, when we're diving into what's being said by this officer in court, what are some of the critical things can come out of this that the prosecution may be able to use, and how critical also is that cross-examination by the defense?
Well, the critical evidence is what was seized from Mangione, the gun that
the gun and the manifesto
was allegedly used in the murder, the silencer, and that journal that really identifies Mangione's motive, apparently, for committing this murder. I mean, that is critical evidence. If for some reason the defense is able to successfully...
And just so you guys know, Luigi doesn't just have state charges, he also has federal charges too. So the FBI filed a criminal complaint, and then obviously the NYPD has a case against him. So he's facing both a state and a federal case.
Get it suppressed or excluded because it was a warrantless search and seizure. That is a huge win for the defense. So taking one step back, the Constitution obviously protects all of us from unreasonable searches and seizures, from having to incriminate ourselves. So if the police, they do something that violates the Constitution under the court's inherent power and the exclusionary rule, any evidence seized or any statements obtained in violation of those constitutional rights.
Now, guys, I've been to suppression hearings many times when I was on the job. So suppression hearings, guys, I'll boil it down for you very simple. A suppression hearing is typically a hearing where the defense challenges the manner in which the evidence was obtained. So let's say, for example, you pull a guy over, right? A trooper pulls a guy over, finds 10 kilos of coke, right? And then they call the DEA. DEA shows up, arrests the guy, puts him in federal charges. What'll happen is that guy's defense attorney, before going to trial, will file a suppression hearing challenging how the drugs were seized. And what they'll say is, well, the trooper didn't have probable cause to stop the car. So therefore, everything that comes after the stop of the car is what's called fruit of a poisonous tree, which means it can't be used, okay? So suppression hearings are kind of, how do I say this? They're attempts to kind of get the case dismissed or eliminate the government's most incriminating evidence because they'll challenge how that evidence was obtained. Does that make sense? So that's what these suppression hearings are for, because they're hoping that if they could get the manifesto or the gun taken out, that's going to drastically increase their chances of winning the case and or getting a sweeter plea deal, okay? Contrary to popular belief, most criminals, like 90% plus, take plea deals. Very rarely do people go to trial, like Diddy and shit like that. And there's a multitude of reasons why, but if you're able to get a successful suppression hearing, what ends up happening is you can leverage that into getting a better plea deal. So let's say hypothetically here, let's say that Luigi Mangione's lawyer is able to get the manifesto and the gun thrown out, right? If the manifesto and the gun are thrown out, the state and the government don't have that much evidence. So they're going to have to downgrade the charges to like some bullshit like manslaughter or involuntary manslaughter, etc. Right? So what ends up happening is it gives them far more leverage to get a better deal down the road. So that's why they're doing this suppression hearing, because they're trying to avoid trial. They're trying to not get as much evidence as they can, and they're trying to prop up the defense to be as strong as they can if they do go to trial by knocking out evidence. Cool? So I hope that makes sense.
Can't be admitted at trial. There are certain exceptions, of course. So that's why these pretrial hearings are critical. If those statements are tossed, then the prosecution has a lot less evidence to use in the case. Now, I'm not saying they still can't get a guilty verdict with the surveillance video, eyewitness testimony of the individual that was at the scene, the person holding the coffee, the e-bike that was used to flee the scene, and anything else that didn't really have to do with this incident and this initial stop and arrest in Pennsylvania and what Mangione said. But this is a critical hearing. So what the defense is trying to do is to argue that because of these violations, the statements by Mangione should be suppressed. And the statements are really important because you have those initial lies that we talked about, right? Any lie can come into evidence because that tends to show consciousness of guilt. And then after he was arrested, there were some statements that were allegedly made to corrections officers where Mangione said that he had the gun in his backpack and that he had a knife. Why is this important? Because even if those statements were made after the Miranda warnings were given and they weren't in response to and interrogation by police officers. They were just spontaneous statements. Those can be given and they don't violate Miranda. So you're seeing a lot of discussion right now in cross-examination where the defense is saying, is it reasonable that Mangione was just making these statements himself and he wasn't being questioned? That's where the defense is going right now, trying to attack the credibility of the officers in this case, saying, no, this was an arrest. This was a custodial interrogation. He had a right to remain silent. And he didn't make a knowing involuntary waiver. Even if those statements were made after the Miranda warning.
Okay, that's some other shit.
All right, it does appear that we're having a few audio issues public on this case as well. But how does a judge
I thought that was me for a second.
kind of navigate the situation?
See, look, even Fox News be fucking up. You niggas complaining about my goddamn audio. Fox News be fucking up, and they got like a team of 100 niggas, bro. All I got is just me. I don't want to hear no more bitching from y'all. If Fox News can fuck up, so can I, damn it.
Situation like this.
Well, the judge matters a lot because the judge is the referee, the umpire, whatever you want to use, but they're the gatekeeper of the evidence. One of their key roles is to decide under the rules of evidence, under our Constitution, what comes into the trial and what doesn't. So these types of hearings outside the presence of the jurors are critical because it may not just determine the outcome of the case, guilt or not guilty, but these are issues on appeal. And we know that at least in the federal case, this is a death penalty case and there are mandatory state and federal appeals in these types of cases. So obviously this is a unique case in that we're proceeding both in state court and in federal court. That's not common. And of course, the defense is arguing that that's improper, an entirely different set of arguments that they're making, particularly in the federal case. But I mean, the judge is critical because this is the type of ruling that can really make or break the case, especially for the defense here if the judge allows all this in.
It'll certainly be interesting. And I want to take you behind the scenes here on Live Now from Fox, just our watch with camera so you can see how everything is unfolding. And we certainly appreciate Nima Rahmani for being with us, our legal analyst. But I also want to point to another aspect of this conversation that
And guys, if Luigi Mangione does go to trial, I will go to New York and cover it for you guys. I will. I think his state case is moving along a little bit faster than the federal case. I think the state's going to get first crack at him because murder typically falls under the state. The feds only can do murder if it has some type of nexus to interstate commerce. I don't know if you guys want me to explain that to you. Give me a 1 if you guys want me to explain murder for the feds versus murder for the state. Give me 1s if you guys want me to do that. I know we got a lot of new viewers in here, but you know, if you don't, just give me a 2. If you guys want me to explain the difference, murder for the feds versus murder for the state. If you don't, give me a 2. We'll keep it pushing. But when he does go to, if he does go to trial, which there's a high likelihood, he might say, you know what, I got nothing to lose. Because if these suppression hearings fail, he's gonna get executed more than likely, right? So he might just say, you know what, I'm gonna go to trial. Okay, lots of 1s. All right, I'll make it simple for you guys then. I'll make it simple. So the state, guys, handles everything from misdemeanor DUIs and disorderly conducts all the way up to capital murder, premeditated murder, right? Everything in between, right? The state normally does. So this is why police departments have homicide units, but the feds don't have homicide units, okay? So whenever someone murders someone, whether it's premeditated or manslaughter or whatever, the state typically takes that case, okay? Now, the feds can come in and do murder if that murder affects interstate commerce. Let me give you guys an example. Me and the team go to a bank and we rob a bank. During the course of robbing the bank, one of my, colleagues, let's say Mo, shoots and kills somebody. Right? We're like, what the fuck? We take the money and we run, right? We get arrested a year later. Not only are we going to be held liable for the bank robbery, because bank robbery is a federal crime, because if it's an FDIC insured institution, so the FBI takes lead on bank robberies. Now we're going to get hit with murder as well, because we were committed during the commission of a federal crime. We killed someone. Does that make sense? So in order for the feds to typically take a murder case, something else needs to be triggered that affects interstate commerce. In this case, it's a bank, okay? Another example. Let's say someone murders someone on an Indian reservation or on the high seas, right? Couple gets mad. Tyrone and Shaniqua go on a carnival cruise. You know what I mean? Jaquarius eats the fried chicken. Shaniqua gets mad, pulls out the blicky, kills this nigga, right? Normally, that would be investigated by the state. But since it's a crime that occurred on the high seas, the feds are going to take it, okay? So does that make sense, chat? Give me 1s if that all makes sense. That is how the feds can investigate murder. They need some type of interstate nexus to take it. But otherwise from that, the state almost always takes premeditated murder.
good here. I want to put this up on your screen.
Hey, like the goddamn video, bro. Yo, we are the most diversified fucking stream. This is the most diversified show on the fucking internet, bro. We could go from making fun of dumbass Akash.
Thank you. Come again.
To women being thoughts. To real estate investing. To geopolitics and how them boys. Bro, we do it all over here, man. Welcome to the debrief, niggas.